The DJI Osmo Mobile 2. Now, the original Osmo Mobile is something that you might be familiar with already, and it has been a viable tool for creatives that use their smartphones primarily for photo and video. But the DJI Osmo Mobile 2 comes with a few enhancements. One of those enhancements is the weight of the gimbal. It's now lighter than before, and that is achieved by removing the spare battery compartment, which used to be down here, but there is a trade-off here, as there is now a 1/4-20 thread that allows you to mount this gimbal onto any tripod. There have been other changes to the design, mainly in the controls. Once you have the phone mounted and you're using the DJI Go app, all of these controls can be used to trigger the shutter or to move the gimbal around. However, there was a trigger on the original Osmo Mobile that was used to change the modes. You could tap it in order to change the mode or to lock the horizon, and you can double tap it to reset the position of the phone. That is now a function that is on the front in a face button that has a big M on it. There's a zoom slider on the left opposite a micro USB charging port that we do wish was USB Type-C, but at least it powers the big battery that's inside that can go for up to 15 hours. Now, 15 hours is a lot of time that you might end up using for something like a live stream, and one nice thing about this gimbal is that it also doubles as a power bank. So if you're going to try doing stuff like a live stream, you would be able to power your phone using the built-in battery of the Osmo Mobile 2. So the design has been somewhat refined, but there is one huge addition to this that might make this, a very affordable gimbal, as we'll get into that later, incredibly useful for even more than just creative smartphone photographers and videographers, and that is the portrait mode. Right now I have the gimbal in the usual position, which is where you would get a landscape orientation, but also this clamp is now spring-loaded, which is a little bit of a pain to use sometimes because you really have to wedge your phone in there. But once you loosen this back portion, you are able to rotate this into a portrait orientation, which is huge. But there is one problem that I have with this portrait mode. The clamp only rotates in a certain fashion so that you have to remove the phone in order to change the orientation. And then of course when you change the orientation, you have to reset your adjustments in order for it to be balanced. Now, I know what you're thinking. Stabilization has gotten better on smartphones over the last year or so, so why would you need a gimbal? Well, there is one place on the phone that doesn't have that kind of stabilization, and that is right here on the front-facing camera. Using a gimbal like this just makes things a lot smoother, and you can get a little bit more reach because there is a handle, so you can get the camera a little bit farther away from you for a better shot. There are some things to take into consideration though. Remember when you're using a gimbal like this that you want to have smooth movements, not necessarily fast or rapid, because the motors might not be able to keep up with you. And even then, some of the phones, even though this gimbal is able to take on bigger phones, some of the phones might be a bit top heavy or just heavy in general. So if you have it in portrait mode like this, here's an example of what might happen. You go a little bit too far on the axis to the point where the motor can't really keep up anymore. Obviously, the main function of a gimbal like this is to just stabilize the phone so that you can use whatever app you want. You can, for example, in the Pixel 2, just open up the camera app, hit record, and then you'll have really stabilized video. But to get the best experience out of the Osmo Mobile 2, it's best to use the DJI Go app. Now, unfortunately, this is where I have to give you some of my frustrations because I have been using a beta version of the DJI Go app. Now, that's an important disclaimer to give because the software could get better, and if I give DJI some credit, the DJI Go app is a lot better now than it was back when the original Osmo Mobile came out. But DJI does have a history of shoddy Android development, and if you've ever used a DJI product with an Android phone, then you know what I'm talking about. There are times when the app will just crash, or it might not even connect to the product that you're trying to use. And unless you're using the latest Android phones, you might have a give and take situation here. Sometimes it's going to work perfectly like it did with me back at CES, or it would be like yesterday where the app pretty much didn't work about 80% of my day. Now again, I was using an unreleased beta version of the DJI Go app, but if you go to the app in the Play Store, it already has support for the Osmo Mobile 2. So what is beta is technically not beta anymore. And the reason why is because this is going to be on sale at the Apple Store exclusively for at least a short period of time, and then it will be open to everybody else. So when it works, the app is actually the best way of getting the most out of the Osmo Mobile 2. Not only does it trigger all of the different controls that you can use, but the app itself has a lot of great features. You have a couple of features for photos, including an automatic panorama mode that moves the gimbal around in order to get a perfect panorama shot. And of course, you have manual controls, so you can change your ISO, your white balance, and you can change whatever you need to get the perfect frame. For video, there are a number of really creative and fun modes that you can use, like time lapses, or you can add in some motion by having the gimbal move in a very smooth motion and still have the aesthetic of a time lapse. And then of course you have hyperlapse, which is when you would take the same time-lapse photos, but you yourself are moving, so it makes a very stylistic video. There's a level of convenience when you're using the controls down here, especially with the shutter button and also being able to move the gimbal around if you want smooth movements. So if you're able to get past the loading screen of the DJI Go app, then you might be able to have one of the best experiences with this gimbal, the way it was meant to be used. But of course, with this portrait mode, you're probably going to end up using a gimbal like this more often in places like IG Stories. Open up Instagram and go into the Stories area, hit record, and you have a stabilized video that allows you to really step up your social media game. What you're seeing right now are a bunch of clips that I used while we were at CES and while we were in downtown Vegas, where I was able to get some really awesome shots, and really, people were asking what I was using in order to get these awesome shots, and in reality, I was using a smartphone, a Pixel 2, but it just happened to be on the Osmo Mobile 2. So, as with most products, there is of course a give and take with this, and I will admit that I was incredibly frustrated with the app itself, and hopefully that is going to get better over time. However, for now, the DJI Osmo Mobile 2 is available as a straight stabilizer, and I think that a lot of people will want to get this, because in the past it was a creative tool, but now it's something that pretty much anybody can use, especially if you're into social media. So, with the price points, it's actually kind of a no-brainer for a lot of people who want to have more stabilized footage. And that's because the DJI Osmo Mobile 2 comes in at $129. That's an incredible price. And even with the kinks that still have to be ironed out, you could get a great stabilizer that really gives you some more options when it comes to your video content. So as always, thank you guys very much for watching, and hope you enjoyed this review of the DJI Osmo Mobile 2. I still really enjoy using this gimbal, even if it's just as a stabilizer at those times when I can't get the app to open. So, like I said, hopefully the app will get better, and DJI has improved it over the last couple of years since the original Osmo Mobile. But for now, this is a really affordable gimbal that you can use to make your social media videos that much better, like what you're seeing right now. Keep it tuned to Android Authority for even more about the DJI Osmo Mobile 2, all of the flagships that we're going to see in 2018. And remember that all of the different pieces of content can be found at AndroidAuthority.com and our YouTube channel. So remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and remember that Android Authority is your source for all things Android.